Pathmonk is the AI for website conversions. With increasing online competition, over 98% of website visitors don't convert. The ability to successfully show your value proposition and support visitors in the buying journey separates you from the competition online. Pathmonk qualifies and converts leads on your website by figuring out where they are in the buying journey and influencing them in key decision moments with relevant micro experiences like case studies, intro videos, and much more. Stay relevant to your visitors and increase conversions by 50% by adding Pathmonk to your website in seconds, letting the AI do all the work, and increase conversions by 50% while you keep doing marketing as usual. Check us out on pathmonk.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to today's episode of Pathmonk Presents. Today we are joined by Drew, who is the CMO of Bluethumb. Drew, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rick.
Thanks for being here, Drew. We're just talking about Bluethumb and what you guys are working on shortly before hitting record. But maybe we go back to the basics for a second, Drew, and we talk about what's the big idea behind Bluethumb. And if you were explaining it to a friend over coffee, how would you describe what you do?
So we are a digital replacement for a gallery. Traditionally, galleries are where you buy art that's over a certain price point. For us, it's around $1,000. And so if you're looking for a piece of art at that price, generally you go to the gallery, you learn stories about the artist, you learn stories and information about sort of the context behind each piece of art and sort of the why and the what that's going on as far as mediums and process. We're the digital replacement for that. We're essentially an eBay that allows physical mediums of art to be sold online. Our secret is that we build up trust, just like in the galleries. And so if you're in a physical gallery, the gallery manager will come up. They'll, teach you about, the value behind the artwork. They'll teach you about the artist. We're the digital replacement for all of that online.
Okay. Are there any types of customers that are the best fit for your product at the moment? As you're saying, you're kind of like the eBay for digital art, right? For art. What kind of goals and needs, if you will, and we're getting into the ICP territory here a little bit, right? Like who buys from you and what they're looking for really. But yeah, just curious to know who's the best fit for your product.
Yeah, so it's mostly homemakers. And so women that are in their sort of 30s to 50s are major cohorts for us. But really anybody that's looking to do interior design. So we do have some interior design that's based on commercial, and then also some trade where, folks will be interior designing for other people.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Now, again, staying on the more technical side of things about your marketing strategy, what are the most effective customer acquisition channels that you've seen at the moment, and how have you optimized them to drive consistent sales?
So that's been evolving over the last couple of years. And so a few years ago, our strongest channels were based in product listing ads. We have over 250,000 artworks live. And so it's easy for folks to be able to search through our stuff and purchase. But more recently, we've had a lot more success with dynamic social product ads. And so we are compositing different types of ad mediums based on our metadata that we have about our artists, metadata we have about our products. And we're building composites that sort of personalize and speak directly to those artists and those artworks, rather than sort of spitting a large swath of just product ads that have the default user generated content. We're kind of building these personalized little ad units to try and get the grain of granularity down to something that's really interesting for the potential customer and hopefully enlightening, right? We're introducing them to how the company works and then getting to this granular level of, oh, you're interested in this type of art. Here's some suggestions, or, oh, we see now that you're browsing these types of artists. Here's some other artists in the same vein. And here's some more sort of educational content about the artists that you are interested in.
Okay. So I'm curious, how much of a role does that strategy, like for your website, let's say, right? They come from an ad, right? Now they land on your website. How much of a role does your website play in real time, if you will, in pulling in new clients and personalizing the experience, if you will, just showing them different kinds of artists that might be interested in different types of art, right? All those kind of things. How does that work for you guys?
Yeah, so we're in the discovery phase of personalizing the website. We have, a personalized search result in a sense, but we don't take a lot of the data that we have in our customer data platform and apply that on site in a way that would be pretty exciting. And so we've tested a couple sort of ideas of surfacing content on site when certain CDP elements fire. But we have a lot more information that's coming out of our marketing end than is coming out of the sort of personalization on site end of our output. And so we're making strides to kind of get those ad units and stuff moved into a very personalized space. And I think we'll have to figure out a way to trigger those same sort of experiments on site.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And maybe if we touch a little bit on from your experience, what you're seeing with Bluethumb, but also from you can draw from any experience. What do you
Sure.
think makes a website actually convert and drive more sales? And on that end, maybe if there are any tools that you can share. People do love a tech stack, so if you have a mention or two, that's great. If not, then we can talk about frameworks or any ways that you've seen that the website converts. It could be messaging, it could be a bunch of things, of course, but from your experience, what actually works?
Yeah. So from my experience, and this is coming from a marketing perspective, really the big deal is having your product team work well with the marketing team. And so you can have a tool that's doing the conversion rate optimization on site, Optimizely or Pathmonk or whatever, and unless you're working tightly with other teams, in this case, product team working tightly with the marketing team is the context I have the most experience with. Those experiments don't get placed, and so obvious experiments to get the site working are pretty sort of easy to source. But once you get through those, the rest of the experimentation is business model specific. And so to surface that sort of good discovery about like what about the business model is worth experimenting with our limited bandwidth for experimentation, and what should we do with those tests? It's critical that you get rituals in place so that on a quarterly basis you're discovering with the team, where those pain points are, where they think the opportunities are that would take just a little bit more engineering experimentation to really unlock scaling within these different categories. And within marketing, almost all of the growth that is attributed to marketing is really a product marketing improvement, like 80% of the time in my experience. And so working with the product team to kind of like feed them the pain points of the business model, not just sort of like, oh, we wish we could convert more, but hey, we do things a certain way. We aren't able to, for example, we build a lot of dynamic sort of on-demand content. And if the metadata that the users have provided isn't clean, it's really hard for us to build good ads at scale. And so we'll build, let's say we're building a mood board right now that basically builds each of our artworks into a mood board that has different dynamics based on the style of art, the color and the side of the art, and that sort of stuff. And so the composition of the mood board will change based on the dynamic of the art. And so that'll be sent out to Pinterest. It'll send folks back onto landing pages on site. And so it'll be kind of like a soft lead magnet for folks that are doing interior designing. But for us to put the image, on the ad unit, we need to know if the image is in situ, which meaning like if the art is placed in a room or if it's a close up. We need to know the size of the image, since artists are allowed to upload different types of images to their UGC. And so when we don't have that sort of, good metadata coming in from the engineers, in this case, we can't execute on these experiments that then move the product marketing and the whole organization forward. And so it's really kind of getting into that nitty gritty, ugly space where you're in the messy middle of, I can't
Mhm.
do this in my team, in this case, marketing. You need to place the experiments with product. They're already super busy. And then, on top of that, you need to evaluate the sort of effort impact mix to even get it prioritized from the marketing team. And so I think it's really important to get the rituals in place with product and each team that, is a customer of the product, um, where, they could, you know, claim that they have pain points without having to back them up with revenue sort of estimates of how much it'll make when they're fixed every single time. A certain amount of product stuff just needs to be fixed for each team based on the fact that they're like, okay, like my operations are hurting based on this, and so even if that's some small chunk of the product's overall output, say like 5 or 10%, that's the sort of thing that really I think starts making the whole machine run a lot faster. And so you can get, I guess, just to sum all this ramble up, you can get lost in making sort of effort impact decision prioritizations within your product marketing team, really within any team. But there should be space, let's say 10% in your workload for just clearing out problems that seem to be just hurting operations. Pain points where it's just a little bit frustrating to do something that's not automated. It's a little bit frustrating to not have a certain piece of information in the CDP about a customer, so it's easy to activate audiences, ads, changes on website, that sort of stuff. And so a lot of times that tech debt piles up, and only the really big important stuff gets moved. And so it's important to take those little piecemeal pieces, especially the ones that hurt your team the most, and make sure they get a little bit of the prioritization.
Yeah, that I love that you gave us a glimpse into that decision metrics, that prioritization, and for this specific example, right? And that's a perfect segue actually for what we want to hear about next, which is a little bit more about you, Drew, as a leader, right? So you talked about your team and the product team. Um, can you give us an idea of what you focus on a day to day? What are the most important things? If you want to break it down, even the three most important things that you focus on. I'm sure there's more than that, but just to get an idea of what do you focus on and what's your workday look like.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess the three big focuses for me, leading the marketing group, are, the first is sort of strategic clarity. I think about strategy as a tree. And so on top, we have sort of an OKR system, supported by KPIs. And so keeping that aligned with leadership, really important to me. But then to the extent that it's a tree, that kind of leads into the second most important bit, which is sort of agile Kanban operations. Um, the OKRs all link in to our epic stories. OKRs generally run for us at like a quarterly basis. They're big strategic
Mm.
movers. These stories, they operate on more of like a monthly basis. And so the tree starts to break out like normal calendar aggregations. And so, monthly we've got stories, and then on the weekly, daily basis, we've got cards that we play that connect to those stories that link up into our OKRs. And so, for me, making sure that process is matured and sort of the rituals are continuing to hit sort of the um, sustainable work pace that we think is healthy, is really important, I think, to making the team healthy and happy, and making sure that the growth is headed in the direction that leadership is aiming for. And then the third bit, is really structural integrity of the marketing tech stack. A lot of times, especially with product integrations, we get MVP um, levels of um, integration. And so we'll ask for new tool. It will get an MVP type integration, meaning that, it gets the minimum viable product fit. And then, you know, the hope is that later down the road, it'll get more engineering love. But a lot of times it gets kind of dropped off in this MVP state. And so staying on top of the marketing tech stack and having clear ideas of where you'd like to be as an end state,
Mm.
and making sure that you have milestones to that end, helps keep kind of everyone's butts to the fire. Everyone's nose stays more to the grindstone, if you will, and then that allows really that whole sort of three-part machine to get off the ground.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. I think it's pretty interesting, especially the last part about, adding that urgency, if you will, but also
Mhm.
clarity on where you're going, uh, essentially how to do it. If that's not so clear, then you have to think about it. But yeah, there's a few moving parts in it that definitely someone has to have an idea of how to structure that, right? So, um, to stay on the topic of structure. Now we're going into the back half of the podcast here, and before we wrap things up, I would love us to jump into our rapid fire segment. And so we try to keep things light and engaging here, Drew. So really, there's a few questions, nothing crazy really, but the only unspoken rule is for a concise question, we want a concise answer. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right. So maybe let's get started with this one. I know there's a flood of content out there, right? How do you stay ahead of things? And the question really is: do you prefer watching, reading, or listening to content?
Mm. Um, I'm a visual learner, so I prefer watching, but I don't think it's the most efficient way of learning, probably most of the time. Um, I'll run my videos at whatever the maximum speed is, like
Mhm.
2x, 2.5x, and then put on captions because the words start to sound kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'll try and consume video as fast as I can, but I still don't think that that allows me to learn as quickly as reading. Um, and to that end, for a long time, I've used a feed aggregator to take all of the blogs in the marketing world and put those into one spot where I can just kind of keep track of them. More recently, I now do an AI feed aggregate, and so basically, I take my list of feeds. The AI reads whatever's new for the week, and then just summarizes an email of all that. And so then I just kind of catch up over that email summary. And I don't have to then spend time doing the whole like scrolling through the feed thing, unless I, want to in some spare time. Because it's a dirty habit, pleasure, I guess you could call it. Because it's nice to just scroll through stuff kind of ambiently and enjoy that. But again, right, not very efficient. And so getting that weekly sort of summary of all of your blogs that you're using on AI in the email allows me to just really quickly make sure that I've got those talking points ready.
All right, Drew. I also have a particular question for you about your marketing life with tech. So, if you had a magic wand and you could fix one frustrating thing in your marketing life with tech, what would it be?
I think I would fix my inability to perfectly personalize our offering to the customer. It's always struggling when you can visualize sort of how it would be best to gain more of a customer's trust, improve more of a customer's ability to buy easily, frictionlessly, all that stuff. Removing all of that takes a lot of different, team partnerships, tech stack partnerships, experiential know-how, all that stuff. And so I would definitely take the magic wand and create the sort of perfect customer market product fit. And so kind of build this perfect magical triangle where the product perfectly fits the customer and that perfectly fits sort of the marketing positioning.
Wouldn't that be sweet?
Yep. I'd be out of a job.
Yeah, right. So maybe let's not use that magic wand for a little while, and then when it comes time to retire, then you can pull it out.
Love
Okay.
it.
Lastly, Drew, if you could go back and give your past self a quick pep talk at the start of your journey in this field, what advice would you drop?
I would say to be more aggressive about learning, but be more selective about learning well-known methodologies and sort of, be selective about learning stuff that's going to be safe and future facing. So I think if you learn, a couple languages that are very function specific, built into tools that that you're using at a certain job, that learning sometimes can just go right out the window when you switch tool stacks, when you switch jobs, when you switch functions. But if you learn the prevailing, top 5 languages, let's say Python in this case, that's going to serve you for a long time. It's future facing. Future languages will be derivative of that. And so I think it's important to both be really aggressive about continued learning and then be really selective about learning only the stuff that's going to work in the future.
Okay, that's a really good one, Drew. I want to thank you for these last few gems that you share with us, and also want to thank you a lot for being on the show with us today. As we wrap things up, I want to give you the last word. If someone forgets everything about the interview today, Drew, what is the one thing that they should remember about the work you guys are doing at Bluethumb?
Well, we're really working to be the most trusted name in art. And so we'll be not the biggest art marketplace as much as we'll be the most trusted art marketplace in the world. Right now, we're the biggest art marketplace in Australia, but that's not really important to us. We're working through our product fit, through our marketing, through all of our team's efforts to build trust. And so being the most trusted name in art in the world is where we're headed. And it's a really exciting path.
Well, it sounds like it for sure. So, how can we help? Where can people go to check you guys out, and see if there's anything, maybe the interior designer, maybe for the art, person just like passionate about art. Where could they go to check out what you sell?
Yeah, absolutely. You can just search for us online at bluethumb.com.au.
Easy as that. All right, Drew. Again, thank you for being on the show with us today, and wish you a wonderful day.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the time, Rick.
Of course. All right, bye everyone.